Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us. It's after 12:30. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 12:32. Some of us who were traveling from the downtown Louisville area got backed up in traffic. Appeared to be an accident on 64 at the Waterson intersection. So a few of us are running a little bit late. So the meeting today is the Transportation Policy Committee, Thursday, October 28th, and I will turn it over to Andy for a roll call.
Okay. We've got, for those on Zoom, we've got a few more people here than usual. So shall we go around the room first? I'm Andy Rush, Transportation Director here at KIPDA.
Rick Tonini, Mayor of St. Mary's. Garrett Haley, the Executive Director at KIPDA. Ricky Bullicano.
Laura Scott, FHWS.
Pedro Delgado, KYTC.
Nick Vale, KIPDA.
Kevin Beatty, Town of Clarksville.
Craig Burris, KIPDA.
Thomas Witt, KYTC.
Elizabeth Parsons, KIPDA.
Thank you. For those online, I guess we'll do a quick roll call. Bullitt County, we have here in person. Keith, thanks for joining us. Anybody from the City of Charlestown? City of Jeffersonville? City of New Albany? City of Shively? Mayor there. Thanks for joining us, Mayor. City of St. Matthews, Mayor Tonini's here. How about Clark County? I saw Brian.
Hi, Dixon.
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Floyd County? NDOT? His name. Hi, Tony, if you can hear us. Jefferson League of Cities? KYTC? Thomas and Isidro in the room. Anybody else?
Matt Bullock.
Matt?
We got Tom Hall here with District 5 Planning.
Tom? School Metro?
Dirk Goen.
Okay, from the airport? Oldham County? Anybody? Town of Clarksville?
Kevin.
Kevin's here. Mike's name, Sue? Clark?
Harry Butler.
Okay. All right. For our advisory members, anybody from FAA? Anybody else from FHWA other than Nora? FTA? Metro Planning and Design or HUD? All right, and I see a couple of other folks that just joined us. Larry Summers, see you on there. Anybody else just joined us? Hey, Matt. Hey, Matt. Saw Matt on there, too. We certainly have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Andy. First item on the agenda is the approval of the September 2021 TPC meeting minutes. As we have done in the past, if you make the motion or the second, please state your name. For those who are voting, you can either raise your hand or say aye, and you will be counted accordingly. So, need a motion and a second to approve the September 2021 TPC meeting minutes.
Harry Butler, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Matt Mignoy, second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your right hand.
Hey.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Item number 3, public comment period. Turned over to Greg for public comments.
We did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting by email, and I do not see anything in the chat at this time.
Okay, staying with Greg for public involvement report.
Great. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to kind of update you all on last month's outreach efforts. First off, we'll go to the social media things. Facebook and Twitter saw a slight increase from August, which is always good news in the impressions world. Also, website analytics Our MTP page was also up slightly, as well as our transportation main page. So it was good. We did receive 3 new pin drops added this month. 2 of those came from a Goodwill Fall Festival event that I attended. It was actually a really good event. We attended that at the end of September, and it was got a lot of really good comments. Spoke to some good people out there. Also, we participated at the Louisville Health Advisory Board's Community of Care meeting. And yesterday, we were actually out at U of L's campus for their Louisville Sustainability Day. I have a little bit more report on that next month, but that was also a really good event. Proposed Amendment 4, we also had that public comment period. 15 comments, 18 likes on those projects. We advertised in 4 newspapers. We're also in 3 business associations and chamber newsletters. Social media campaign alone got over 1,300 impressions, and we sent out an email campaign. Got about 20% clicks on that. Over 400 people with the unique opens, and we sent it to over 2,000 recipients. Getting on to the comments that were received from the Goodwill Fall Festival. A lot of those were TARC related. One person brought up a bus stop at Eastern Parkway in Bradley that's a little bit on a slope, and it makes it difficult to exit. We also have a 2-way red light that's off 7th Street in Kentucky. It's blinking red instead of working. And some of the other comments were mostly general. They just like to see us see TARC and connect with workers more to get to the east end of employments. Potholes in the West End were also a concern. Heard that a couple of times. And you see the last one was concerned about transit services being late and the effectiveness of buses. That concludes my report for this month. I'll take any questions if anybody has any, but that concludes mine.
Any questions for Greg? All right, hearing none. Moving on to agenda item 5, Amendment 4 to the Connecting Kentucky and the 2040 MTP and the 2020 through 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Today I'm coming to you all to request action on Amendment 4 to both the MTP and TIP. Before I get to that, let me give a little background. I think Greg's going to pull up the website that the public-facing website that we have, where folks can go and see the schedule and the project listings. But I'll talk just a little bit about the schedule here, just to give everyone a little background on how we got here. Back in May, I think we kind of advised everybody that we were going to be starting the amendment process. And for those who don't know or haven't been here for a little while, amendments are typically required for major project changes, things that impact, potentially negatively impact air quality, and things that don't fall within our group projects policy. If they do fall within the group projects policy and are considered minor projects or minor project changes, then we can do that through the administrative modification process. And at the end of this meeting, I'll be talking to you about our administrative modifications. So these are projects that could not be changed in our documents via administrative modification. And two primary components of an amendment are the air quality conformity air quality conformity activities that are performed by KIPDA staff, Randy Simon, Andy Rush, in conjunction with our partners at Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District, Craig Butler and his team. They have a lot of work to do. They spent kind of the end of July through early September handling the air quality conformity activities. Back in September, late September to early October, we held a public comment period, 15-day federally required period, and we also had an evening virtual meeting where folks could hop on and ask questions and whatnot. So we got through all of that. We also received the recommendation from the TTCC two weeks ago, recommending approval. And so here we are today. The projects that are included in this amendment, there's about 18 of them. I know, Greg, if you don't mind pulling the map up, I think gives a good representation. Projects that are highlighted, I think it's green is new, is that right? Green is new, blue are revisions to existing projects, and red are, just pull up the project listings, that's fine. So the projects that were included in Amendment 4, there's a number of removals, and anytime we remove any project, no matter if it's $1 or $10 million, we have to take that through the amendment process. So you'll see a number of removals of projects and bridge resurfacings and whatnot in NDOT. In addition, a lot of the changes were around the Sherman-Minton Bridge. They're not really substantial. Basically, NDOT decided to consolidate about 7 or 8 individual projects there at the Sherman-Minton Bridge where work is being done right now, and consolidate that into one project. Maybe a more significant change is on Kentucky 1450. We added a new state project from KYTC and adjusted the termini of an adjacent project there on 1450. And there were 2 TARP removals of projects that they are no longer going to advance and planning to use those funds for other projects. And maybe the last couple that I will mention, NDOT is planning a new roundabout at the State Route 60 interchange and Kentucky Road 311. So a roundabout is planned for that location. And NDOT is also planning to add a travel lane on State Route 64 in the Edwardsville-Galena Road area. I can take any questions or comments about the project. Otherwise, I'll move forward with the action item.
Any questions for Nick on those items? Okay, Nick.
All right. Hearing none, my first request is for approval of Amendment 4 to the Connecting Kentuckiana 2040 MTP.
Do you have a motion and a second, please?
Motion to approve Amendment 4. Dirk Goen.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. All right, that item is approved.
And then the second action requested is for approval of Amendment 4 to the fiscal year 2020 to 2025 TIP.
All right, looking for a motion and a second on this item.
Motion, Dirk Goen.
Harry Butler, second.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. That item is also approved.
Thank you all.
Nick, I think you're still up. Amendment 5 to the Connecting Kentuckiana 2040 MTP and the 2020-2025 Transportation Improvement Program.
Yeah, I wish we had an acronym that could just consolidate all of those words together and we could just say one six-letter phrase there. So staff is moving forward already with Amendment 5. We received a couple project changes that came in, and the map here shows those projects. I think there's 8 of them. One of them is kind of has an urgent need to expedite, and so we're doing what we can to move that project through the amendment process. All of these projects are considered exempt in terms of air quality impact, and that's because most of them, or all of them, are bicycle and pedestrian related projects. We're not expanding any roads or anything of that nature. So we have an expedited schedule, and our plan is actually to bring this back to you all with the project listings and documentation next month. It's probably the quickest turnaround we've had, but because because the projects are exempt, we don't have to do the air quality conformity process, which saves us, 30 to 45 days. We've started our public comment process that is currently open. As you can see, we've already got comments and likes up there on the map. And so the projects of note in Oldham County, Currently, Oldham County has a kind of a master bike and pedestrian project. That's the long blue route. I don't know if you can zoom in, Greg, on that in Oldham County. And so they are ready to move forward with one of their segments of this larger bike and ped network. So that's the green portion in Buckner that they're getting ready to move forward on. So we're basically just removing that master project from the TIP. It will just be the parent, essentially, of these smaller child projects that Oldham County will try to complete as they can. Same thing is going on with Louisville Metro's Ohio River Valley Northeast Bike and Pedestrian network over there. So they are essentially adding 2 new children of this larger Louisville Loop segment that goes from Prospect to the Big 4 Bridge. One of them is located here in and around the East End Bridge, and then the other segment goes from the Big 4 Bridge to the Caperton Swamp. So 2 segments of this longer 8.5-mile network. We've got a removal of a bridge in NDOT, a very minor project there, but they are pushing that back, or they're canceling that project for right now. So again, any removals have to go through this process. And then U of L is proposing a new project that was funded with MPO dedicated funds by the TPC last year to make some campus improvements in and around Brandeis Avenue between 3rd and 4th Street and the 2nd and 3rd interchanges there at Museum Drive. And so one of the things we're doing is removing that new project from the old project, which was the completed Floyd County or Floyd Street roundabout. So that's a lot of information, but this is kind of a prime example of some great bike and pedestrian projects in our region. And I can take any comments or questions on those, but I'll be bringing this back for you for action next month.
Any questions on this item? All right, so the agenda does say action requested today, but you're saying you're bringing it back next month?
No, not on this one. This is Amendment 5, and we've got them right next to each other.
Sorry, I didn't.
No problem.
I was still looking at agenda item 5 instead of amendment 5.
No worries.
All right, wow, moving quickly through the agenda. Item 7 is the 2022 TPC Officers Nominating Committee. We actually have 1 open position, and that will be for the vice chair position only. And so it's usually the chairman and 2 other representatives who comprise that nominating committee, and including Andy. So if I'm looking for a volunteer from the Kentucky side and a volunteer from the Indiana side, please. And if we don't get volunteers, then the chair gets to enact the draft.
I would rather volunteer than be drafted, so I'll be glad to represent Kentucky.
All right, thank you, Carrie.
Represent Indiana if she Keith is willing.
All right, well, we had both Carrie and Keith volunteer, so we'll let Carrie represent the Indiana side and Keith can represent the Kentucky side. I guarantee we can get it done in 1 meeting, probably less than 10 minutes, so we'll be getting a hold of you. All right, thank you for your volunteer. Item number 8, Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 MTP, update goals and objectives. David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's kind of funny. We are talking a lot about the MTP Connecting Kentuckiana 2040, which is our current Metropolitan Transportation Plan, but we're also talking about the update, Connecting Kentuckiana 2050, which is what I'm talking about today. As you know, staff has been working on an update to the Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan for over a year now. And we've reached that point where we want to get the TPC's guidance by developing or by approving a set of goals and objectives for the update. As you may recall, I asked the TPC to establish a working group to help staff draft some goals and objectives for your consideration. We had 8 volunteers to help us on this working group. It was a very effective group. We met on October 6th and reviewed a set of goals that were drafted by staff. These goals are basically some modifications and some changes we made to the existing Connecting Kentuckiana 2040 goals. We presented them to the working group. The staff component or the staff process included many things that we brought into consideration. One of them being the public involvement process that we did in February and March. And we presented the results of that outreach effort to you in April. We also are looking at the national goals and the planning emphasis areas that are defined by USDOT. And then we are also considering some of the nuances that we believe are going to be part of the new infrastructure bill that should be hopefully approved in the very near future. Staff presented a slate of 9 goals and objectives to the working group. Like I said, we met on October 6th and went through some lengthy discussions that I think were very, very constructive. And then the working group, through consensus, agreed that the changes that we had made based on the October 6th meeting would represent a good slate of goals and objectives to present to you, the TPC, today. The working group completed its effort on October 18th after they had thoroughly reviewed the changes that they had proposed at the earlier October 6th meeting. There are 9 goals and objectives, and as you can see that they're on the screen. You also have them in your packet. I think that it was a good effort, and we tried to bring a lot of the important issues that we heard from the public to bear in these goals and objectives. If you'll notice, some of the objectives are in blue. Those relate directly to federal performance measures. So we want to make sure that we do recognize those federal mandates in our goals and objectives. That's all I have. Does anyone from the working group have anything they want to add to what I've presented?
Yeah, Dave, this is Carrie Butler. I just wanted to, thank you and your team and the KIPDA staff for working on these, and also to thank the members of this working group that helped put this together. I do think that we had a really good discussion, and appreciate staff being able to take a working group, of different people, and to be able to make edits that can be very difficult when you have a bunch of people trying to share, thoughts. And I just want to applaud the team for being able to put together, to take our feedback and put it into workable goals and objectives. And I'll just make a note that, if you see sort of the key points of the goals and objectives, safety, sustainable transportation, accessible and equitable transportation, transportation investments, like thinking about economics and regional economic growth, innovation and efficient roadway system, public transit, active transportation. So I think this is speaks to kind of where we are now in our transportation system and the different ways that we need to provide all types of transportation in the region. So thank you for that. Thank you for your all's work. I know it is difficult to get feedback from multiple people, so appreciate that.
Yeah, and I was on the working group. This is Matt Minier with the city of Jeffersontown. I do want to kind of echo what Carrie talked about. While there was 4 that were really focused around some of the federal performance measures, we also wanted to take some further steps and refined a lot of the emerging trends, like Carrie talked about, in sustainable transportation in order to protect the environmental resources, and also make sure that we're cognizant of fostering an attitude of accessible and equitable opportunities in transportation, in all forms of transportation. So as you look through the different goals, particularly 2 and 3, talk about those, and then also expanding the options for single non-single occupancy, as well as enhancing any bike and ped movement across the transportation system. So I do echo the same thing Carrie said. The staff was willing to listen to the working group's ideas and comments as we kind of discussed a lot of those key items. So thank you, David.
Thank you all very much. I do want to reiterate this was a staff effort. I mean, almost everybody on staff at some point was involved in putting these goals and objectives together for your consideration. So thank you for that.
All right, any further questions for David? Hearing none, this is an item that does require action, so would need a motion and a second, please.
Hey, I did have one comment. This is Tom Hall with KYTC District 5. Can I make a comment before action?
Please go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I would like to comment that both the federal and state goals have an item that discusses reducing project delivery delays. And I would like to the MPO to consider adopting a similar goal in the MTP so that we can all sort of be on the same page. And maybe the MPO could also recognize that we should always be looking for ways to streamline and improve our efficiency in delivering projects.
I will say, Tom, that I agree with you completely. And we did look at the goals for the US DOT and the state, and trying to make sure that we incorporated all the emphasis areas that were on the federal and state levels. We do recognize that we excluded the expedited project delivery, not because that's not a good idea or a concept that we don't believe is a good one that we should pursue, but we weren't quite sure how well that worked within the context of the MTP. I think that might be something, and I'm sure Andy would agree with me, that we pursue on a regular basis, trying to make sure that we advance projects as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. So while I share and I agree with you on the concept, we just did not believe it was something that was appropriate for a MTP goal.
Well,
For what it's worth, I kind of tend to agree. I'm not sure how that's a goal, a long-term goal of the planning process, because that's not necessarily anything that this body or, that this body would have any specific, like, ability to control. I mean, do we set the policies of how projects are I guess how projects are programmed, but the oversight body, FHWA, FTA, I guess FAA or FRA. So, I mean, Tom, can you speak to that? What TPC or what KIPDA would be doing specifically to expedite project delivery? I mean, programming funds, yes, but project delivery.
Well, programming is a part of project delivery. And if you look at amendment item number 6, or excuse me, agenda item number 6 that we spoke about today, that's a great example of how KIPDA worked to expedite the programming of a project, several projects, so that we can efficiently put that funding to work more quickly. And that is exactly the example I'm talking about. KIPDA is already doing that, but KIPDA should be striving to do that even more. And that's an example of where it's being done. And as a person who's worked with these committees for almost 15 years, I can tell you there are opportunities to move things even more quickly if we sit down and we examine those. So I don't see the harm in documenting what's already being done and striving to do it better.
Sorry, I was having a sidebar conversation here in the room regarding this matter. At the discretion of the chair, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion and a second to approve it as is, but then I'm going to ask staff to work with Tom and possibly get input from Carrie on this, and if possible or necessary, bring back an amendment at the future meeting to the goals and objectives. That way we can continue with this item moving forward and make an amendment if needed in the future. So Need a motion and a second to approve the item.
This is Carrie Butler. I'll make a motion to approve, and I hear the possibility, I hear what you're saying to bring it up for a future amendment, so I'll make that motion to approve as is.
I second to approve as is. Dirk going.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. I just thought it might be a little bit more productive if this conversation would continue, and then if an amendment is needed, then or proposed or desired, we can bring that at a later item or later time. So, all right, continuing on, item number 9, quarterly review of the MPO dedicated funding programs. Back to you, Nick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the regularly scheduled quarterly project review of our MPO dedicated programs for which CPC has the authority to award. I think very quickly we can go through the Indiana project status. In Indiana, there are 4 programs for which CPC has authority to award funds from, those being the CMAQ program for air quality, the HSIP program, which is focused on safety, Surface Transportation Block Grant, which kind of covers just about any project, surface transportation project, and the Transportation Alternatives program. For Indiana, their fiscal year began in July, so they've already begun making progress on some of these obligations of funds. But as you can see, for the most part, the majority of the funding is still currently unobligated, and that's not a surprise. Typically, those obligations in Indiana kind of rapidly occur between January and March of the fiscal year. So I think at the next quarterly meeting, I'll have probably a more substantial update for you all on the Indiana programs. Does anyone have any questions about kind of where things stand with the folks in Indiana and the obligation of projects, I should say? Okay. Moving on to Kentucky, we only receive or are sub-allocated funds for the STBG and the Transportation Alternatives programs. At the beginning of the year in the STBG program, and many folks in Kentucky refer to it as the SLO program, we started with about $58 million programmed. We currently receive about $20 million annually, so that represents about 3 years worth of funding. Obviously, with COVID and the pandemic still occurring for much of the last fiscal year, things did not move forward as quickly as most of us would have liked. We were able to, or KYTC and their partners, Federal Highways, were able to obligate about $7 million of those 58, which means that about $51 million is being shifted in project phases to fiscal year 2022 or beyond. And in the Transportation Alternatives program, we programmed about $2.3 million at the beginning of the fiscal year. There was $1 million in obligations, leaving about $1.3 to be shifted to the next fiscal year. In the big picture, the Surface Transportation Block Grant program, obviously we have a carryover balance that we're working to reduce. And so the goal is always kind of about, at least $21 million to ensure we don't add to the carryover balance. We weren't able to get there this year. I know project sponsors, KYTC District 5 staff work as hard as they possibly can. And I know anecdotally about a number of projects that are very, very close to being authorized, some of those for construction, which could mean 10, 16, in one case maybe $20 million for one project phase when that does occur. So I'm hopeful that I think 2022 will be a big year, but we did add $14 million to our carryover balance in that program. In the Transportation Alternatives program, we added about $1.3 million to the carryover balance. Any questions or comments about the kind of status of fiscal year 2021 as we wrap up? Okay. Moving on to the cost increases and the phase shifts that are being requested. First, I'll start with the phase shifts. In the packet, there was, I think, 2 pages of phase shifts that occurred in Kentucky. Those are related to the shifts I just mentioned, mostly in the Surface Transportation Block Grant program, but a few in the TAP program. So that's one portion, and I didn't obviously want to list out all of those phase shifts here on this slide. But in terms of cost increases, in Indiana, there wasn't an opportunity for project sponsors to request additional funding for existing MPO dedicated projects, so projects that have already been awarded by the TPCs. At the time, about 2 months ago, we had approximately $145,000 and change available. We received requests from Clarksville and New Albany for fiscal year 2022 funds. Clarksville requested $107,000 federal for a PE phase that's required due to environmental documentation as related to a property owner that wasn't allowing, I think, the city to kind of come on site and assess the situation. So they're going out to do those activities in another means. And then the increase for construction on the East Main Street project in New Albany, the request was $320,000. And you can see here on my slide, I'm showing a request for those $320,000. But in your packet that we sent out last week, it was reflected as only $38,000 because that's all we had left. Well, on Monday, I received word from Floyd County about 2 MPO dedicated projects that they are putting on hold and returning the federal funds for. There are 2 guardrail projects in the knobs. They're highway safety improvement projects that, for a variety of reasons, including public feedback, they are not pursuing those right now. So we have additional funding available, and we are now able to fully fund New Albany's construction phase. So that is the reason for the change in between when the packet went out and today's presentation. So I did want to make note of that. And then on the Kentucky side of the river, we had 4 requests for cost increases. One for Hubbard's Lane, $900,000 for construction in 2022. River Road, 4.4 for construction, which would bring that dollar amount up to $22 million for construction. So obviously, if that project is able to move forward in 2022, that immediately helps us with that carryover balance. Oldham County, there's a Buckner Connector utilities phase that needed just a little bit more money, about $30,000. And then U of L also needed about $500,000 more for utilities on that 2nd Street, 3rd Street Brandeis project that I mentioned before. We have more than enough funds to cover all of the cost increases in Kentucky, so we didn't have to form any working groups of that nature. So these are the 6 cost increases, along with the handout of phase shifts that I can take any questions or comments about before I request action.
Any questions of Nick?
All right.
Hearing none. This item is an action item, so I do need a motion and a second to approve the fiscal 22 cost increases for both Kentucky and Indiana projects, as well as the phase shifts for the Kentucky projects.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion. This is Dirk Goen for the cost increases as well as the phase shifts.
I'll second that motion. This is Larry Summers.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye or raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. That item is approved. Moving on, item number 10 in the agenda, the I-65 corridor study, and I'm going to turn it over to Andy to start this project.
All right, thank you very much. One of the things we like to do here at TPC and TTCC meetings both is to showcase some recent planning studies that have recently been completed in our region, and so that's especially true when they're planning studies that are funded through some of the federal dollars that we get here at KIPDA. So this month, the I-65 corridor study is going to be wrapped up, and that's a project that was done with KIPDA in conjunction with KYTC, most certainly, to look at I-65 from near the fairgrounds, just north of 264, to the point where the Bridges project quit, so to downtown. And so we have a familiar face here to present, and that's John Callihan. Many of y'all know John from many of his past gigs. He's got so many, he sent me a bio to read, so I'll let you all hear it. So John has worked for KYTC, the Corps of Engineers, Kentucky Division of FHWA, and as Director of Transportation for Louisville Metro. So for the past 3 years, he's been with AECom. That's the firm he worked on this project for in conjunction with QK4 and a couple other firms. John graduated from UK in 1992. He's a professional engineer and a project management professional. John now lives in Greenup County, where he grew up and serves in the Army Reserve as the command chaplain for the 81st Readiness Division at Fort Jackson. So there's a lot of meetings on this study where John was, he had to get to his Army duty, so we appreciate his service for certain. And while with AECom, John has worked the past few years on the Bridging Kentucky program, and that he's presented to this committee, if I'm not mistaken, not too many years ago on that, and leading the transportation planning efforts like the I-65 corridor study. So, John, we're happy to have you, and turn it over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Andy, for reading that bio. That's I thought it was short, but that was too long. So this study, about 2 years ago, as Andy alluded to, there was some federal planning funds that were available that were to be dedicated for MPO work, and the Transportation Cabinet reached out to MPOs across the state, and KIPDA proposed through your committee process this study on I-65. So I'll just go through this pretty quick. So the scope of the study was to look at short-term and long-term improvements that the Transportation Cabinet specifically could implement. And so it was to look at the transportation needs, environmental issues, economic benefits, to do benefit cost analysis of the improvement concepts that we developed, safety issues, look at structural needs. Just in 2019, the cabinet had looked at the bridges along the corridor, so that was a critical piece as well. And of course, if you drive 65, you know that the pavement conditions were something that we needed to consider as well. And so we did this study certainly with the cooperation of the project team, which primarily was KIPDA and KYTC staff, but then partners with FHWA as well, and then a lot of input through a large stakeholder group. Of course, this was during the pandemic, so that was done virtually, and then community input, which was done online as well. But the tasks, just like any study or most studies, looking at existing conditions first, and then proposing some improvement concepts, figuring out practical solutions, developing cost estimates for those solutions, and then presenting those to stakeholders and to the public for input, and then prioritizing those improvement concepts. And then the part that we're wrapping up right now is the final report to document that. So this busy slide, I'm assuming you all can see the slides I've got, but this busy slide is showing the schedule that we went through with and I mentioned about 2 years ago when the funding was made available. Our firm and our partners on our team, QK4, EHI, and BA, received notice to proceed in July of 2020. So, we jumped into the existing conditions part, doing traffic modeling as well, and then started really our first engagement period right at the end of the year. So that was in December, and we extended on into January of 2021. And then after that, we gathered that information and started really doing the development of some concepts that could improve I-65. And then in the April and May timeframe of this year, we had our second round of engagement where we presented some of these ideas and gathered some input. And then in July, we presented those to the project team who helped us develop priorities for these different concepts. And then since then, we've been working on the draft report, submitted that in August. And the stage that we're at right now is we've submitted the final report. The cabinet and KIPDA provided some comments on that. And right now we're in the final stages of that. We've addressed their comments and sent it back out to the cabinet and to KIPDA for just a final proof to make sure we've got that right. So I would anticipate in a week or so, the final report will be wrapped up and truly submitted to the cabinet officially, and then they will post it on their website soon after that. You saw a map that Nick was sharing earlier, and we used a similar story map for our project, and this is just a glimpse of what that looked like. And it also shows on this map the limits of the study area. As Andy mentioned, it starts really about from the fairgrounds and goes all the way to the downtown. The story map proved to be a very effective tool to get information out. What you see here on the screen, the circles with the letters are the different improvement concepts that we came up with. So if a person were to go into the story map and click on one of those icons, it would bring up a little more information in a pop-up box, which includes the construction cost and a very brief description. And then there's a click here for more information. And when someone would do that, it would pull up then a PDF, a map showing what's intended to be done if this improvement concept were to move forward. There were also online surveys, so you could indicate whether you thought that this particular concept should move forward or not as well. So all that information was very useful to the project team in evaluating the concepts. So this is kind of a table showing the results, and all this is documented in the report as well. And when you look at those letters, if you're really good at your alphabet, you'll notice that A, B, C, and D are not listed on there, and we're also missing V. And just to explain that real quickly, I mentioned that in 2019, the cabinet had done a study of the bridges throughout the corridor. 3 of those bridges in the I-65 corridor in the footprint of this study have been identified as needing replacement or rehab pretty soon. And so within the last year, KIPDA, through your committee process, has amended the tip to put an item in there for KYTC item 5-261, which is to work on those bridges. And so the cabinet is in the process of selecting a consultant to design those bridges. And but that's one of the things we realized was some of the more short-term things you'd want to implement on I-65, for example, improvements to the striping, to the signing, ITS improvements in the corridor, intelligent transportation system improvements, some drainage improvements that were identified in conversations with the maintenance folks with District 5. That's what A, B, C, and D were. And so those 4 concepts, we didn't put those on the website and ask for folks to prioritize those because it was in conversation with the transportation cabinet, it was thought that those would move forward, whether with the replacement of these 3 bridges or the next time I-65 is the pavement is rehabilitated or resurfaced, that it was just acknowledged that those kind of things could be worked into the normal process and didn't need to be standalone projects. V is a concept that when we presented it to the project team, it was just thought that that it wasn't really worth carrying forward even to the part of prioritization. So it was an idea that that we had really brought out of the last time I-65 had been studied was back in 2008. And so it was one of those concepts that we saw in that study and we pulled forward, but the project team decided not to move forward with. But as you can see on here, even after we did some of our analysis, some of the concepts were, as it shows there in priority, eliminated. And then some were deemed to be a high priority, and then some as a lower priority. So if they received a high or a low priority, the project team felt like these were worthy of future investment. With the high priorities, if you total that up, that's about $5 million in initial investment. And then if you add in the low, you're at about $60 million for the total package that is shown here. So this is what the cover of the final report is going to look like, something like this, but I'm going to go through some of those high priority concepts and just to give you an idea of what could be coming. And so the project sheets that we developed have a map at the bottom and then at the top a little information. And so this is near the back of the final report that will be published. But just to go over a few of these, the restriping of Preston Street at I-65 northbound on-ramp. And I'll show you that on a map, but this is a very low cost improvement. But there is some confusion if you've ever traveled along Preston Street and you want to get on 65 northbound there. So this is just to make it a little clearer on what should be happening at that location. And really our focus on the study, we started to to look at the whole corridor, but then realize that really to get the best return on investment. For this study, we needed to focus on what could we do to improve safety, reduce congestion on main line of the interstate, and then also the adjacent ramps. And then the next thing that we wanted to consider was when those ramps tied down to surface streets, what could we do to make sure that that was it meshed as well as possible with bike and pedestrian concerns and that local street traffic as well. We didn't want to do anything that would that hamper more of that multimodal movement of transportation on the surface streets, nor anything that would box Louisville Metro in, for example, on a street where perhaps it's one way currently where the ramp terminates, but if they wanted to switch that from one way to two way in the future, the improvement concepts we developed, we wanted to make sure that they were compatible with that as well. So another one is, and these first few are very minor. This is at Boxley Avenue at Crittenden Drive. And it's really just as you come off 65 southbound to Crittenden Drive. Right now at the very bottom of the ramp, there's an immediate right turn or access point to Boxley Avenue. Churchill Park School is right adjacent to that. So, this would take some coordination with the schools, but could you close that off and have traffic come on around and use a new high street to access this? Right now, Boxley Avenue is blocked off, so there would need to be some changes made there. But certainly from a safety standpoint, if you're exiting off that ramp, that would be an improvement. The Arthur Street ramps, this may be a part of why this study was very important. I know the University of Louisville was very concerned about I-65 and the Arthur Street ramps in that area. What I'm going to show you on a map in just a second is one concept of what could be done there, and it certainly wouldn't be the only way that things could be addressed. But one of the difficulties there is you've got quite a few ramps in the I-65 corridor, and I guess that's one thing I ought to mention is that one thing that we ruled out early on in the study was the addition of an additional travel lane north and southbound, basically widening of the whole stretch of I-65. That didn't seem to be a reasonable approach to fixing things on 65. So our focus, really was on safety improvements. What specifically could you do to ramps? Perhaps auxiliary lanes, perhaps collector distributors, in some cases the removal of some ramps, and you'll see some of those in these recommendations as well. But at Arthur Street, and this is shown on two different sections, but it's really trying to separate the local traffic movements from the interstate access points. And so that's what you can see here. Don't take a look at this and think that this is absolutely what would happen. But what you're seeing on here is the yellow is the removal of ramps. The greenish or aqua color is the additional of new ramps or new pavement. So once again, it's just trying to clean this up a little bit. Eastern Parkway ramp. Louisville Metro did a study just a year or two ago on Eastern Parkway. And so what we're proposing here fits in line with what that study had recommended. I think that study was recommended on Eastern Parkway changing in lane assignments as well. And what we're proposing here is on S65 northbound, as you get off at Eastern Parkway, instead of having that basically a free flow movement when the ramp ties into Eastern Parkway, teeing that in and bring it to more of a stop condition, which would improve the intersection at Eastern Parkway and Crittenden Drive as well. The Woodbine, Preston, Jackson interchange at 65, those ramps. This is probably what I'm going to show you today, the one that is one of the larger changes that we would recommend. You can see here, this is the elimination of two different ramps, 165 northbound, the off-ramp to Woodbine Street, and then an on-ramp that goes from Preston Street to 65 southbound. What that would mean is that a portion of Preston Street would have to be converted to two-way to accommodate this as well. But one of the things that this would help with is on I-65 northbound currently, exits 134A and 134B, as you can see there, are just separated by, it's very close, just by a couple hundred feet. So it makes it kind of difficult on drivers to figure out just what's going on there. And then a couple other of these high priority ones at St. Catherine Street, similar to what I showed with Eastern Parkway, but eliminating what in essence is kind of a free flow movement is right now, and bringing this into more of a T condition. So this is I-65 northbound getting off at St. Catherine Street. As you know, if you drive 65, a lot of the ramps there, your merge distances are almost, well, they're very, very short. And so anything we can do to improve those would be a help for safety and congestion as well. And so this is one from St. Catherine getting on 65 northbound. It wouldn't take much to widen that ramp out and give an additional merge distance. I say it wouldn't take much. It would take some slight widening to the bridge that is over Kentucky Street and over Brook Street. That just so happens to be one of the three bridges that the cabinet intends on rehabbing or replacing. So this is an improvement concept that could be implemented when that bridge is replaced. The funding for that currently, what was amended in the TIP at least, is construction dollars. I think it's $54 million in 2023. And then the Brook Broadway ramp, another issue is as you come off this ramp, I-65 northbound getting off at the Brook Broadway, and it connects there with Jacob Street. If you come down that ramp currently, there's the opportunity to make a quick left-hand turn really before you've slowed down much, and then go under 65 at Jacob Street there. This would close that off, and then it also, once you get down on Brook Street and you're approaching Broadway, this would also adjust the median there as well, so that you've got more opportunity to, if you're on Brook Street and you want to take a left on Broadway, or you're coming off this ramp and you want to make a right onto Broadway, just a little more opportunity to do that merge, or that, I guess more accurately, a weave to get in the proper lane. And then the last one I'm going to show you of the high priority ones is the Crittenden Loop ramp. So if you're coming from Crittenden Drive and you want to get on 65 northbound, this is another one where it's a very quick merge. And so we looked at a couple of different options. This one doesn't improve the merge distance all the way to the AASHTO Green Book standards, but it gets it awfully close without affecting the bridge that's over Crittenden Drive, and without affecting the property to the south, because another option would be to bring this loop farther to the south, and then you would get more distance to accelerate before you merge. But this gets you awfully close, and was deemed by the project team to be something worth considering in the future. So that's the package of about $5 million of improvements of about 60 million total identified in the study, that I thought I'd just take some time to share with you today. So with that, I guess I just want to toss this up. If you have further questions about this, you certainly can contact me. Beth Neiman was the project manager for the transportation cabinet. Beth previously worked in District 5, currently works at the central office in Frankfurt. And then Andy, who you all know, served as KIPDA's project manager as well. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you all. And if there are any questions, I can take those, or you can certainly get with me outside of this meeting, and I'm happy to talk about this project at any time.
Thanks, John. I would encourage everybody, to take a look at their public outreach and that website again, because that was pretty innovative use of that sort of technology, especially COVID or non-COVID. I mean, that was a really good way of doing things there. The other thing that I think is notable here, and John mentioned it, is I think a lot of people maybe the public perhaps, had a preconceived notion that the idea was to widen I-65. there was no widening projects that were high priorities there. Probably couldn't, or it would cost, you know, who knows what it would cost. So that was not a part of this, and so John and his team, the QK4 team, did some of the design work there, did a tremendous job on being a little bit more creative than maybe we might typically need to be. So appreciate it, John.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on the agenda, item number 11, fiscal year 2020 through 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. Nick, looks like you get another one here.
Here we go. This is a quick one unless anybody has specific comments or questions about projects in this packet. This is our standard kind of administrative modifications, minor changes to projects, to existing projects, new group projects. But for the most part, these changes all reflect those phase shifts for Kentucky projects, the cost increases for Kentucky projects. I will note we did not include those cost increases for Indiana, and I've been working with the project sponsors to make that happen. So we'll have an administrative modification 22 that I'll send out next week that'll kind of cover those Indiana cost increases that we talked about since some things changed last minute this week. But yeah, again, most of these are phase shifts and cost increases that you all just approved as part of agenda item 9, and there's one or two other changes from NDOT in here as well. I can take any comments or questions, but there's no action required.
All right, any questions, Nick, on this item? Hearing none. Point of the agenda where people get to bring topics to the floor. Is there any other items to bring up for discussion?
I've got a couple real quick, if that's okay.
Yes.
The Transportation Cabinet has just kicked off their long-range, most recent iteration of their long-range transportation plan. So I'd encourage everybody to take a look at their website. They've got some public outreach going on right now. It's getthereTogetherKY.org. So again, that's KYTC's long-range plan. It's just getting underway. The other thing I'd like to mention is our meeting in November. For those of you that are KIPDA Board of Directors attendees, you'll probably hear a little bit more in the next hour about this. But it's a bit up in the air. Typically, November is our annual meeting, as many of you all know, and we would have a luncheon, a meeting in the morning on the Tuesday of Thanksgiving, a luncheon shortly thereafter. We're going to talk to the board, I guess, in the next hour and finalize what time all of the meetings will be that day. Here's what I can tell you right now. This meeting will be immediately preceding the board meeting. So we'll be in the same spot, we'll be in the same place. So stay tuned, I guess, is what I can tell you. Stay tuned to your email notifications. When we find out today or tomorrow or whenever that is, we'll send a early notice out to you guys to make sure you mark your calendar for next month. So it's going to be on Tuesday, November 23rd. Time and location are pending. So just want to point that out to everybody. That's all I have.
Thank you, Andy. Any other business to come before the committee? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 1:35. For those of you who will be sticking around for the full board meeting, we'll see you a few minutes before 2. Have a good rest of the day.